Today we're going to be reading the Crucible, and I'm going to show you where we can find this audio recording. So if you go to our American Literature folder, American Lit B folder, and then you scroll down to the folder that says the Crucible audio version, and you click that, then you will see a list of each of the acts audio versions. And so today we're going to be listening to Act 1. And you want to turn your textbook to page 363. And you'll see on 362 a list of the characters. And then you'll see that there are some background information that's given to help you understand the context of the play. And then we're going to listen to the play. I would recommend when you read a play to listen to the audio version, because the audio version is going to be just more interesting, and you'll get to hear the voices of the different characters, and it helps you kind of understand what's happening a little better. So we're going to get started. We're on page 563.
The Crucible, Arthur Miller. How far would you go to stand up for what you believe in? In Arthur Miller's The Crucible, one man, John Proctor, battles a community that he feels has gone mad. Salem, Massachusetts in
1692, where scores of people were arrested and many executed on charges of witchcraft. Read along to see if Proctor is met with success or failure in his struggle.
Act 1. An Overture. A small upper bedroom in the home of Reverend Samuel Parris, Salem, Massachusetts, in the spring of the year 1692. There is a narrow window at the left. Through its leaded panes the morning sunlight streams. A candle still burns near the bed, which is at the right. A chest, a chair, and a small table are the other furnishings. At the back a door opens on the landing of the stairway to the ground floor. The room gives off an air of clean spareness. The roof rafters are exposed, and the wood colors are raw and unmellowed. As the curtain rises, Reverend Parris is discovered kneeling beside the bed, evidently in prayer. His daughter, Betty Parris, aged 10, is lying on the bed, inert. At the time of these events, Parris was in his middle 40s. In history, he cut a villainous path, and there is very little good to be said for him. He believed he was being persecuted wherever he went, despite his best efforts to win people and God to his side. In meeting, he felt insulted if someone rose to shut the door without first asking his permission. He was a widower with no interest in children or talent with them. He regarded them as young adults, and until this strange crisis, he, like the rest of Salem, never conceived that the children were anything but thankful for being permitted to walk straight, eyes slightly lowered, arms at the sides, and mouths shut until bidden to speak. His house stood in the town, but we today would hardly call it a village. The meeting house was nearby, and from this point outward, toward the bay or inland, there were a few small-windowed, dark houses snuggling against the raw Massachusetts winter. Salem had been established hardly 40 years before. To the European world, the whole province was a barbaric frontier inhabited by a sect of fanatics who, nevertheless, were shipping out products of slowly increasing quantity and value. No one can really know what their lives were like. They had no novelists, and would not have permitted anyone to read a novel if one were handy. Their creed forbade anything resembling a theater or vain enjoyment. They did not celebrate Christmas, and a holiday from work meant only that they must concentrate even more upon prayer.
So I did underline some things here that I want you to underline also. And so this is important background information that's going to help us understand these characters' motives and just what's going on in the town at the time of this play. The Puritans, who these people were very much into religion. So that's why they were called Puritan. They felt like the only way to be fully pure and good in God's eyes was to be 100% religious. And they didn't do anything of enjoyment, and they just worked and they prayed. So they worked hard and prayed. We also see here that this is some good information that tells us what they felt about children. So children were not thought of as very smart or cunning. Cunning means like you're able to come up with plans on your own and carry them out. So you'd never think that a little 10-year-old could plan something and carry it out. Basically, whatever a 10-year-old said at that time was considered truth because they didn't think that a 10-year-old would be capable of anything but telling the truth. So it was just kind of showing how naive they were at the time.
To say that nothing broke into this strict and somber way of life. When a new farmhouse was built, friends assembled to raise the roof, and there would be special foods cooked, and probably some potent cider passed around. There was a good supply of ne'er-do-wells in Salem, who dallied at the shovel-board in Bridget Bishop's tavern. Probably more than the creed, hard work kept the morals of the place from spoiling, for the people were forced to fight the land like heroes for every grain of corn, and no man had very much time for fooling around. That there were some jokers, however, is indicated by the practice of appointing a two-man patrol, whose duty was to walk forth in the time of God's worship, to take notice of such as either lie about the meeting house without attending to the word and ordinances, or that lie at home or in the fields without giving good account thereof, and to take the names of such persons, and to present them to the magistrates, whereby they may be accordingly proceeded against. This predilection for minding other people's business was time-honored among the people of Salem, and it undoubtedly created many of the suspicions which were to feed the coming madness. It was also, in my opinion, one of the things that a John Proctor would rebel against, for the time of the armed camp had almost passed, and since the country was reasonably, although not wholly, safe, the old disciplines were beginning to rankle. But as in all such matters, the issue was not clear-cut, for danger was still a possibility, and in unity still lay the best promise of safety. The edge of the wilderness was close by. The American continent stretched endlessly west, and it was full of mystery for them. It stood dark and threatening over their shoulders night and day, for out of it Indian tribes marauded from time to time, and Reverend Paris had parishioners who had lost relatives to these heathen.
So basically what this part of the background information is telling you is that at this time in Salem, Massachusetts, life was very hard. The land was very difficult to work, and people believed everyone should work together and work hard because the safety relied on everyone kind of doing their part. So in order to kind of have everyone do their part, they were kind of always in their neighbor's business and checking up on what their neighbor was doing and making sure that they were working hard and not fooling around, because everyone, you know, they believe so much in worshiping God, and they believe so much in hard work that if anyone was caught doing anything other than that, then they could be fined or prosecuted, and the town would kind of rally against them. So even if there was a person in this town who did not really like what was going on, they tend to follow what everyone else thought was good, because they needed to all kind of stick together in order to stay safe. So again, this is a lot of foreshadowing as to what's going to happen later. Also, you know that they felt safe in their little community of Salem, but outside of their community of Salem, it felt very dangerous. There were Indians outside of their community. There was also, animals and the wilderness, and they felt safe if they just stayed in the walls of their community. And they still didn't know really everything about the wilderness, everything about the Indians. And there was still so much that was unknown, that anytime you have stuff that's unknown, it leads to fear. And that is kind of that is the focus of our unit, is fear.
The parochial snobbery of these people was partly responsible for their failure to convert the Indians. Probably they also preferred to take land from heathens rather than from fellow Christians. At any rate, very few Indians were converted, and the Salem folk believed that the virgin forest was the devil's last preserve, his home base and the citadel of his final stand. To the best of their knowledge, the American forest was the last place on earth that was not paying homage to God. For these reasons, among others, they carried about an air of innate resistance, even of persecution. Their fathers had, of course, been persecuted in England, so now they and their church found it necessary to deny any other sect its freedom, lest their new Jerusalem be defiled and corrupted by wrong ways and deceitful ideas. They believed, in short, that they held in their steady hands the candle that would light the world. We have inherited this belief, and it has helped and hurt us. It helped them with the discipline it gave them. They were a dedicated folk by and large, and they had to be, to survive the life they had chosen or been born into in this country. The proof of their belief's value to them may be taken from the opposite character of the first Jamestown settlement farther south in Virginia. The Englishmen who landed there were motivated mainly by a hunt for profit. They had thought to pick off the wealth of the new country and then return rich to England. They were a band of individualists and a much more ingratiating group than the Massachusetts men. But Virginia destroyed them. Massachusetts tried to kill off the Puritans, but they combined. They set up a communal society which in the beginning was little more than an armed camp with an autocratic and very devoted leadership. It was, however, an autocracy by consent, for they were united from top to bottom by a commonly held ideology whose perpetuation was the reason and justification for all their sufferings. So their self-denial, their purposefulness, their suspicion of all vain pursuits, their hard-handed justice, were altogether perfect instruments for the conquest of this space so antagonistic to man. But the people of Salem in 1692 were not quite the dedicated folk that arrived on the Mayflower. A vast differentiation had taken place, and in their own time a revolution had unseated the royal government and substituted a junta, which was at this moment in power. The times, to their eyes, must have been out of joint, and to the common folk must have seemed as insoluble and complicated as do ours today. It is not hard to see how easily many could have been led to believe that the time of confusion had been brought upon them by deep and darkling forces. No hint of such speculation appears on the court record, But social disorder in any age breeds such mystical suspicions, and when, as in Salem, wonders are brought forth from below the social surface, it is too much to expect people to hold back very long from laying on the victims with all the force of their frustrations. The Salem tragedy, which is about to begin in these pages, developed from a paradox. It is a paradox in whose grip we still live, and there is no prospect yet that we will discover its resolution. Simply, it was this. For good purposes, even high purposes, the people of Salem developed a theocracy, a combine of state and religious power whose function was to keep the community together and to prevent any kind of disunity that might open it to destruction by material or ideological enemies. It was forged for a necessary purpose and accomplished that purpose. But all organization is and must be grounded on the idea of exclusion and prohibition, just as two objects cannot occupy the same space. Evidently, the time came in New England when the repressions of order were heavier than seemed warranted by the dangers against which the order was organized. The witch hunt was a perverse manifestation of the panic which set in among all classes when the balance began to turn toward greater individual freedom. When one rises above the individual villainy displayed, one can only pity them all, just as we shall be pitied someday. It is still impossible for man to organize his social life without repressions, and the balance has yet to be struck between order and freedom. The witch hunt was not, however, a mere repression. It was also, and as importantly, a long overdue opportunity for everyone so inclined to express publicly his guilt and sins under the cover of accusations against the victims. It suddenly became possible and patriotic and holy for a man to say that Martha Corey had come into his bedroom at night and that, while his wife was sleeping at his side, Martha laid herself down on his chest and nearly suffocated him. Of course, it was her spirit only, but his satisfaction at confessing himself was no lighter than if it had been Martha herself. One could not ordinarily speak such things in public. Long-held hatreds of neighbors could now be openly expressed, and vengeance taken, despite the Bible's charitable injunctions. Land lust, which had been expressed before by constant bickering over boundaries and deeds, could now be elevated to the arena of morality. One could cry witch against one's neighbor and feel perfectly justified in the bargain. Old scores could be settled on a plane of heavenly combat between Lucifer and the Lord. Suspicions and the envy of the miserable toward the happy could and did burst out in the general revenge.
So let's explain what the narrator is talking about here. The Salem witch trials happened in a place that was extremely pious, extremely driven by their religious faith and their love of the Bible and their love of hard work and following Jesus. Now, the author, though, is saying that there are problems in this when there needs to be a balance between order and freedom. So it's important for everyone to kind of do the same things when you need to have order and when you're afraid of the unknown. But unfortunately, if we completely control what everyone does, then we end up taking away freedoms. So even in our own nation, we don't have 100% complete freedom because we do need order, we do need laws, we do need government, we do need people to follow rules. We don't have 100% complete freedom. Well, the author is saying, the narrator is saying that because all of a sudden there was this witch hunt, people could show the worst sides of themselves and say that they are doing this based on their religious beliefs. So they could have had a dispute with a neighbor or hated a neighbor, and then just because of this witch hunt going on, just point at them and say, hey, that person who I didn't like, that person is a witch. And then I would kind of feel good about that. I would be able to wash my hands about doing that, because at that time, calling someone a witch was expected, and that was a pious thing to do. So during the witch hunt, people could call anyone a witch for any reason and be thought of as holy for doing so. It brought out the worst in people. During the witch hunts, it was like our side versus their side. You have the pious, you have the religious against the Satan worshipers, the people who are following witchcraft. And those people who are pious and religious, they were good. Those people following witchcraft were bad. But unfortunately, it's been come to be known that the people who were considered pious and religious were just accusing those people who they didn't like of witchcraft. But there was no real truth behind this, because you guys should know that there's no such thing as witchcraft. It's a made-up thing. I'm sorry, but magic isn't real. Witchcraft isn't real. Hate to break it to you, but this is not a real thing.
Reverend Paris is praying now, and though we cannot hear his words, a sense of his confusion hangs about him. He mumbles, then seems about to weep. Then he weeps, then prays again. But his daughter does not stir on the bed. The door opens and his Negro slave enters. Tituba is in her 40s. Paris brought her with him from Barbados, where he spent some years as a merchant before entering the ministry. She enters as one does who can no longer bear to be barred from the sight of her beloved. But she is also very frightened, because her slave sense has warned her that, as always, trouble in this house eventually lands on her back.
My Betty be hearty soon.
Out of here.
My Betty not gonna die.
Out of my sight! Out of my... Oh, my God. God, help me. Betty.
For some reason, the recording keeps stopping. So just to let you know, we've already started the play, and we're gonna continue listening to it. And I'm only gonna stop it when I feel like it might be confusing and I need to explain it. But if you see me underlining something, you should underline it in your book. If you see me write something down, you should do the same.
Light! Out of my... Oh, my God. God, help me. Betty. Child. Dear child, will you wake? Will you open up your eyes? Betty, little one.
He is bending to kneel again when his niece Abigail Williams, 17, enters. A strikingly beautiful girl, an orphan, with an endless capacity for dissembling. Now she is all worry and apprehension and propriety.
Uncle? Susanna Walcott's here from Dr. Griggs.
Oh, let her come. Let her come.
Come in, Susanna.
Susanna Walcott, a little younger than Abigail, a nervous, hurried girl, enters.
What does the doctor say, child?
He bid me come and tell you, Reverend Sir, that he cannot discover no medicine for it in his books.
Then he must search on.
Aye, sir, he have been searching his books since he left you, sir. But he bid me tell you that you might look to unnatural things for the cause of it.
No. No. There be no unnatural cause here. Tell him I have sent for Reverend Hale of Beverly, and Mr. Hale will surely confirm that. Let him look to medicine and put out all thought of unnatural causes here. There be none.
Aye, sir. He bid me tell you.
Speak nothing of it in the village, Susanna.
Go directly home and speak nothing of unnatural causes.
Aye, sir. I pray for her.
Uncle, the rumor of witchcraft is all about. I think you best go down and deny it yourself. The parlor's packed with people, sir. I'll sit with her.
And what shall I say to them? That my daughter and my niece I discovered dancing like heathen in the forest?
Uncle, we did dance. Let you tell them I confessed it. And I'll be whipped if I must be. But they're speaking of witchcraft. Betty's not witched.
Abigail, I cannot go before the congregation when I know you have not opened with me. What did you do with her in the forest?
We did dance, Uncle. And when you leaped out of the bush so suddenly, Betty was frightened and then she fainted. And there's the whole of it.
Child, sit you down.
I would never hurt Betty. I love her dearly.
Now look you, child. Your punishment will come in its time. But if you trafficked with spirits in the forest, I must know it now. For surely my enemies will, and they will ruin me with it.
But we never conjured spirits.
Then why can she not move herself since midnight? This child is desperate. It must come out. My enemies will bring it out. Let me know what you done there. Abigail, do you understand that I have many enemies?
I have heard of it, Uncle.
There is a faction that is sworn to drive me from my pulpit. Do you understand that?
I think so, sir.
Now then, in the midst of such disruption, my own household is discovered to be the very center of some obscene practice. Abominations are done in the forest.
It was sport, Uncle.
You call this sport? Abigail, if you know something that may help the doctor, for God's sake, tell it to me. I saw Tituba waving her arms over the fire when I came on you. Why was she doing that? And I heard a screeching and gibberish coming from her mouth. She was swaying like a dumb beast over that fire.
She always sings her Barbados songs, and we dance.
I cannot blink what I saw, Abigail, for my enemies will not blink it. I saw a dress lying on the grass.
A dress?
Aye, a dress. And I thought I saw someone naked running through the trees.
No one was naked. You mistake yourself, Uncle.
I saw it! Now tell me true, Abigail, and I pray you feel the weight of truth upon you, for now my ministry is at stake. My ministry and perhaps your cousin's life. Whatever abomination you have done, give me all of it now, for I dare not be taken unaware when I go before them down there.
There is nothing more. I swear it, Uncle.
Abigail, I have fought here 3 long years to bend these stiff-necked people to me, and now, just now, when some good respect is rising for me in the parish, you compromise my very character. I have given you a home, child. I have put clothes upon your back. Now give me upright answer. Your name in the town. It is entirely white, is it not?
Why, I am sure it is, sir. There be no blush about my name.
Abigail, is there any other cause than you have told me for your being discharged from Goody Proctor's service? I have heard it said, and I tell you as I heard it, that she comes so rarely to the church this year, for she will not sit so close to something soiled. What signified that remark?
She hates me, Uncle. She must, for I would not be her slave. It's a bitter woman, a lying, cold, sniveling woman, and I will not work for such a woman.
She may be. And yet it has troubled me that you are now 7 months out of their house, and in all this time no other family has ever called for your service.
They want slaves, not such as I. Let them send to Barbados for that. I will not black my face for any of them. Do you begrudge my bed, Uncle?
No. No.
My name is good in the village. I will not have it said my name is soiled. Goody Proctor is a gossiping liar.
Enter Mrs. Ann Putnam. She is a twisted soul of 45, a death-ridden woman, haunted by dreams.
No, no, I cannot have anyone. Why, Goody Putnam, come in.
It is a marvel. It is surely a stroke of hell upon you.
No, Goody Putnam, it is...
How high did she fly? How high?
No, she never flew.
Why, it's sure she did. Mr. Collins saw her going over Ingersoll's barn and came down light as a bird, he says.
Now look you, Goody Putnam, she never...
Enter Thomas Putnam, a well-to-do, hard-handed landowner, near 50.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Putnam.
It is a providence. The thing is out now. It is a providence.
What's out, sir? What's...
Why, her eyes is closed. Look you, Anne.
Why, that's strange. Ours is open.
Your Ruth is sick?
I'd not call it sick. The devil's touch is heavier than sick. It's death, you know. It's death driving into them, forked and hooved.
Oh, pray not. Why, how does Ruth ail?
She ails as she must. She never waked this morning, but her eyes open, and she walks, and hears not, sees not, and cannot eat. Her soul is taken, surely.
They say you sent for Reverend Hale of Beverly.
A precaution only. He has much experience in all demonic arts, and I...
He has indeed. And found a witch in Beverly last year, and let you remember that.
Now, Goody Anne, they only thought that were a witch, and I am certain there be no element of witchcraft.
No witchcraft. Now look you, Mr. Paris.
Thomas, I pray you, leap not to witchcraft. I know that you least of all, Thomas, would ever wish so disastrous a charge laid upon me. We cannot leap to witchcraft. They will howl me out of Salem for such corruption in my house.
A word about Thomas Putnam. He was a man with many grievances.
Okay, I stopped it here because I wanted to explain what was happening. So you guys know how rumors get spread. So something happens, and then one person tells another person that this is what happened. Then another person tells another person, and then another person tells another person. And before you know it, the actual thing that happened is not really what people are talking about. They're talking about their own version of it. So that's kind of what happened at this time. So Abigail and her cousin, the girl who is sick, were dancing in the forest. And remember, the forest was seen as like the devil's place at that time. And then Mr. Paris came to find what his daughter was doing, and his daughter like faints and doesn't wake up from fainting, and the doctor can't figure out what's wrong with her. And so everyone has this rumor that because they were in the forest and because they were with a slave from Barbados, that they were practicing witchcraft. So the rumor is that, and I already forgot her name. Is it Betty? Oh, his daughter who's sick. Yeah, Betty. The rumor is that Betty, Paris's daughter, is not waking up because she is practicing witchcraft. And Paris is a reverend. So if the town finds out that his daughter and his niece were practicing witchcraft out in the forest with his slave, then that's going to look really bad on him and is going to, basically drive him out of town. And he finally got to the town, finally got in people's favor. But now all of a sudden, Mr. Putnam's coming and saying his daughter is also acting really weird. But of course, she's acting like differently than Betty's acting. And then another thing that you need to know is Abigail worked as a maid in another house because Abigail's an orphan and Mr. Paris is just watching Abigail. She has to go work. And but for some reason, the house that she worked in no longer wants her to work there. And so now we're questioning what's kind of going on with Abigail. So we're going to continue learning about these characters. So this little narrative part is where we learn more information about these characters. And the character we're going to learn about here is Thomas Putnam. I am going to be stopping this soon. We're supposed to read this all the way to page 579 for the first assignment, and then we'll finish it for the second, but I'm still going to have to do this in 2 parts. So I actually think maybe we'll stop here for this part. So this will be the end of part 1 for my video, and then we'll start part 2 on page 571.